Kia ora, I'm Miriama Kamo. Unconscious, vulnerable, struggling to breathe. That's how Alan Ball spent the last 2 hours of his life on the floor of a Hawera police cell. Just metres away, police officers who could have helped. His death led to an unprecedented case for the New Zealand Police. But why have Alan Ball's family been left reeling? Rebecca Wright investigates.
Know in your gut when something doesn't feel right, it's usually not right.
Alan Ball died on a cold cell room floor, police officers unaware he desperately needed medical help.
He could still be alive if they had got help.
So how did a routine arrest go so horribly wrong?
It's the first time in our history that 3 members have gone to work one day and ended up in the courts charged with manslaughter.
Alan Ball's family have travelled from Australia to Taranaki looking for answers.
What do you want for Al?
Justice?
He'd do the same for us.
Yeah.
He'd fight till the end until he got justice, and we've got to do that for him.
Warren, Judy and Kathy have been trying for 2 years to find out what happened to their brother Al the night he died on the floor of a Hawera police cell. What was Al like?
He was fun, he was crazy, we had great times together.
Yeah.
Warren, you guys look so similar.
Yeah, it's like almost in a mirror, hey?
It is?
Was maybe a little bit better looking than Al was.
Alan had come to New Zealand in 1992.
Yeah.
He settled here, he worked
he
here.
did.
20 years in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was part of the family. He was known as the Gentle Giant.
Al worked and lived on Mark Cleaver's farm near Hawera for the past decade.
Always had a smile on his face. You could hear him before you saw him. He was always whistling, like in a happy mood. Never had one argument with him in 10 years, which on a farm where at times can get a bit stressful and whatnot. Yeah, it's pretty rare.
Recently, though, Al's family life had begun falling apart. He was separating, and on a cold, wet and windy night, 111 was called after a family harm incident around 11:30 p.m. Officers described that night.
We arrived at the address to speak with the victim. She states that her partner had hit her in the head and strangled her. He'd been drinking alcohol. She also stated that he mentioned suicide. The male was compliant and engaging in conversation, but denied hitting his partner.
I asked, had he taken anything else that I should worry about? He said no. I then told him again, you're under arrest for assault.
On the way back to the station, Al began falling asleep.
How many bourbons he had? Answer, a lot. As soon as he was asleep, he began snoring.
Crucially, officers are unaware that the man they've just arrested has also taken a large amount of codeine and tramadol, powerful painkillers. Arriving at Hawera Police Station, officers spend almost 5 minutes trying to wake Alan up. He is unresponsive, even to police pain techniques. Here he is, slumping forward face first, without waking or stirring at all. The decision is made to carry him into the station on a blanket. At 123 kgs, it takes 6 officers. They think he is a sleeping drunk.
He didn't move. He didn't move from when he was in the car. They should have not even taken him out of the car. They should have taken him straight to the hospital. It just went downhill from there. It was worse.
Al was unresponsive, not responding to voice, being undressed, or at all during processing.
It doesn't matter what got him to that point. That's irrelevant. If a man is, or anybody, is unconscious, you seek medical help.
That night, Senior Sergeant Sandra Shaw was in charge. Alongside her, Craig Longworth, another experienced officer, and new recruit, Constable Corey Waite, in the force for just 17 weeks.
Good luck. You've done all the hard work.
All three would later be charged with manslaughter for failing in their duty of care to get medical attention for Al.
It just strikes me every time I watch that CCTV that Al is so close to getting help.
Yeah.
But nobody can see what's really going on with him.
We've got a man here, he's unconscious. Can you come check him? Check him.
Yeah.
Something.
Alan Ball.
There were warnings. Hawera Police are connected to the National Intelligence App, known as NIA. When Al was brought in, his information was entered and his intoxication recorded as extreme, prompting this pop-up from the police processing system. Consider whether hospitalisation is required.
They got warnings on the computer. Like you get something on a computer that prompts you to get medical help. Get bloody medical help, you know.
Medical help was not called.
The Crown alleges that another mistake was made that night over how often Alan Ball was checked on. Because of his extreme level of intoxication, unresponsiveness, and as a known suicide risk, it says he should have been constantly monitored.
Constant monitoring. Someone should have been sitting there watching him. Constantly. That's what constantly means.
Do you think that would have changed the outcome?
Yeah. Bloody oath.
Instead, the officers chose frequent monitoring, which means a prisoner is checked 5 times an hour.
They just assumed he was just a nobody, you know?
Another drug.
Another drug. Well, he's our brother. We're not ever saying he's an angel, but who is?
Here we go. I reckon he's unresponsive. He doesn't respond to anything. To any stimulation.
Despite Al's condition, the officers enter partially responsive into the computer. That prompted a second NIA warning. Arrange for the person to be taken to hospital. But they don't. Al is left on the floor of cell 1, another crucial missed opportunity.
I want to learn about Chris White, so I'm on constant monitoring, but
He was snoring, but what the officers didn't realise is that Al is struggling for air. And he was left like this for another 2 hours. He was checked on by police 7 times that night, but no one questioned what was happening right in front of them.
Seeing that footage now, you've watched it over and over again.
Yep.
What is the most distressing thing for you when you see it? That's your brother, you know Al.
It's all distressing.
It's also you're watching your brother die.
Yeah. Over and over again.
Yeah.
For 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
They could have saved him.
In the final 30 minutes of Al's life, he was checked on once, and it's thought he died just after 2 a.m. But it would take around 20 minutes for anyone to realise. At about 2:30 on Saturday morning, Constable Longworth noticed Al was no longer breathing and an ambulance was called.
There's urgency there. They call an ambulance. The ambulance is there. It's quick. That could have happened at any point.
But it's too late.
It's too late. He's dead. We watched him die.
Heartbreaking, it was.
Devastating. And it doesn't get any easier. Like, the more you watch it, the worse it is.
Initially, police weren't going to charge the officers at Hawera, but the Ball family fought for 2 years to get their brother's death properly investigated. And last year, a Crown prosecutor agreed that Alan Ball should not have died in police custody and charged 3 officers with his manslaughter.
We're going to get justice. We're not going away. And we didn't.
And here you are.
And here we are, you know.
Coming up, it is every police officer's worst nightmare.
How do you plead guilty or not guilty?
And the force comes under the spotlight.
You've been looking at this for 10 years. When's the work going to be done?
Where it ends is today.
is an unprecedented trial. The first time 3 on-duty police officers have been criminally prosecuted for manslaughter. The Ball family are here for its final week to see for the first time the officers who arrested and processed Al the night he died.
Members of the jury panel, the defendants Sandra Eileen Shaw, Craig Michael Longworth and Corey Stephen Waite are each charged with 1 charge of manslaughter. How do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
How do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Senior Sergeant Sandra Shaw, in the force for 15 years. Constable Craig Longworth, once awarded for his bravery. And new recruit Constable Corey Waite, just 17 weeks on the beat the night Alan died.
All failed in their duty so badly that they are guilty of gross negligence manslaughter.
Crown Prosecutor Cherie Clark telling the court the officers' actions that night were a major departure from police protocol, arguing their failure to get Alan Ball medical help makes them criminally culpable of manslaughter.
The person who can't be woken should never have arrived at the police station. That's just a medical emergency. The person who cannot be woken should never, ever be in a New Zealand police cell anywhere in the country.
Their defence, that they never intended to let Mr. Ball die.
She accepts that a mistake was made, that she and her colleagues saw a sleeping drunk, not knowing that Mr. Ball had in fact taken a gigantic quantity of codeine and tramadol, intending to end his life that night. Sandy Shaw is an excellent frontline officer, totally committed to serving her community. She wouldn't have ignored a need to take Mr. Ball to hospital if she had seen that need.
That the officers failed to realise that Alan was overdosing, not sleeping on the floor of the cell.
You've seen her on CCTV. There's nothing to show anything other than she and her colleagues are treating Mr. Ball as a sleeping drunk. And their plan was to leave him to sleep it off.
No one knew that he had taken a massive dose of codeine or tramadol. Because when Corey Waite asked him whether he had taken any other drugs, he said no. He could have said, yes, I think I need to go to hospital. They did everything they reasonably could to give him the best care that they were able to do in the circumstances in a grotty old police station, understaffed, undertrained, ill-equipped.
All 3 telling the court that they were failed, putting police training on trial.
The failure or omission to obtain medical assistance for Mr. Ball was a result of systemic failure, not the gross negligence of probationary Constable Waite.
That night, they were let down. They were let down by the chain of command. Seniors, the commanders in Wellington, breached their duty to these 3. They allowed them to go into these situations without properly training them. To have these 3 sitting here right now facing a conviction for homicide, for manslaughter. It's just wrong.
Police commanders have long been aware of training issues around caring for people in custody. Almost 10 years ago, the Independent Police Complaints Authority recommended changes to the system, and those changes are still being implemented.
What happened in Hara on that night is defining because, as we know, it's the first time in our history that 3 members have gone to work one day and ended up in the courts charged with manslaughter.
Tasha Penny is the Assistant Commissioner in charge of custody reform.
Your frontline staff told the court that they were let down by the chain of command, that Police National Headquarters breached their duty to them by allowing them to go into situations without proper training.
So it would be inappropriate for me to comment on the case, but we need to listen to the voices of our people.
The IPCA is finding the same failings over and over again.
They've made recommendations over the last 10 years where we have made some change, but has it been fast enough or gone far enough? The answer is no.
With the greatest of respect, you've been looking at this for 10 years. When's the work gonna be done?
Where it ends is today, and where we make a change moving forward to really look across the board at what we need to do to ensure that we are the best we can possibly be is now. And we are up for it. And we have to change because one more death isn't okay.
Last week, Alan Ball's family visited the Hawera police station on the second anniversary of Alan's death. They wanted to see for themselves the place where their brother died.
What was it like to go inside?
It was a lot tinier, the cell was. The gravel they dragged him on was gravel, cold, wet, horrible. They were so close. They could have saved him.
You would have heard by now that they say we didn't have the training.
Every time they say that, it makes me angry.
But do you really need training to see that someone's unresponsive and not get a medical help?
Those officers would accept that if everything was perfect, in hindsight, they would have sought medical attention.
Chris Cahill is the head of the Police Association, the union representing police officers.
Well, you can't get past the fact that Alan Ball died in police custody. I think the police failed in their duty of care more than the individual officers.
But the question that I'm asking you is quite simple. Whether or not they failed in their duty of care to Alan Ball, it's a yes or no answer.
Well, the fact Alan died says it all.
Yes, they did fail in their duty of care to Alan.
Police have failed to look after Alan Ball.
They take responsibility for his death.
They bear it very hard.
Place Sandra Eileen Shaw, Craig Michael Longworth and Corey Stephen Waite before the court.
After deliberating for just 3 hours last week, the jury returned to deliver its verdict to a packed New Plymouth court.
Do you find the defendant guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Are you all agreed?
You don't have to know them to see the anguish on their faces when the verdicts were read out. Our people come to work every day to work in a dynamic and sometimes volatile situation. At times, mistakes are made. So in relation to this case, to our people and to Mr. Ball's family, and to our officers whānau, everyone's grieving, and we've got to work really hard to support the whole.
What do those officers want to say to Mr. Ball's family?
I want to say sorry. I mean, they know that if they'd made different decisions, Mr. Ball may have survived, and they'd love to turn back the clock and change that for that family.
We just hope that from this that they learn that next time someone's unresponsive that they get help. Don't let someone die on a cold cell floor.
That's what you want the police to learn from this?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
To learn, yeah.
What do you think, Ross?
So no other family has to go through this, you know, like someone taken away.
People aren't just drunks, you know, they're human beings. Treat them with respect.
And last week, before they flew back to Australia, Alan Ball's family scattered his ashes along the Taranaki coastline.